What if Vizag's next big real estate growth story is not Bhogapuram? Everyone is talking about Bhogapuram Airport. But I want you to look just a little differently at the map. Tagarapuvalasa. Because look at what's happening around this location. Bhogapuram Airport, GMR Aerocity, Aerospace and Commercial Development. And now, a proposed 1.08 lakh crore rupees AI data center investment at Polipalli. Then you have Vizianagaram on one side and Bhimili and Vishakhapatnam on the other. And right in between these growth corridors, Tagarapuvalasa. But here's what makes this interesting. This isn't a completely new location waiting for development. Schools are already here. Colleges are already here. Residential communities are already here. And there is already a rental market. So the question isn't, will Tagarapuvalasa develop? The real question is, could Tagarapuvalasa become the connecting point for all this growth? And that's why some people are beginning to compare its potential with the early growth story of Kokapet. But is that comparison actually justified? And more importantly, what could make Tagarapuvalasa valuable over the next several years? Let's look at the map and let's connect the dots. Put Tagarapuvalasa right in the center. Now look at the three directions. North, Bhogapuram. Northwest, Vizianagaram. And towards the south, Bhimili and Vishakhapatnam. And just towards the Bhogapuram side, you have Rajapalova Junction. This entire belt is becoming increasingly important. And here's what's interesting. Tagarapuvalasa isn't starting from zero. The connectivity is already there. What's changing is the economic importance of that connectivity. And that's where the real story begins. Let's start with the biggest development in this region, Bhogapuram International Airport. Phase 1 is designed for approximately 6 million passengers per year, with significant scope for future expansion. But don't look at the airport simply as a terminal where passengers arrive and depart. Look at what is being planned around it. GMR's Bhogapuram Aerocity is a mixed-use development spread across approximately 793 acres. And the numbers are significant. 500 acres for aerospace and defense, 154 acres for commercial development, and 139 acres for residential communities. The larger ecosystem is also expected to include cargo, logistics, R&D, training, and data infrastructure. So the bigger story isn't simply airport and flights. It's airport and economic activity. Because major investment and employment naturally create demand for housing, rentals, retail, hospitality, and everyday services. And that's exactly why Tagarapuvalasa is interesting. Because this location isn't starting from zero. It already has an established residential and educational ecosystem. And now, let's talk about one of the biggest developments in this entire corridor, Polipalli.
In May 2026, the Andhra Pradesh government approved approximately 855 acres to Reliance Industries for a giga-scale AI data center and cable landing station. The proposed investment? 1.08 lakh crore rupees. The land is spread across Polipalli and Ammanam. Now think about the combination. Airport, AI infrastructure, data center, aerospace, commercial development, and logistics. This is no longer just an airport corridor. It's becoming an economic corridor. But here's an important distinction. A data center is not the same as a traditional IT park. A hyperscale AI data center can involve massive capital investment, but it may not create the same number of direct jobs as a large IT campus. However, it demands major power, fiber, network, and specialist infrastructure. So the important point is not just the 1.08 lakh crore investment, but how it can strengthen the digital infrastructure ecosystem around this belt. And that matters because stronger infrastructure and investment can gradually increase the economic importance of the Tagarapuvalasa to Bhogapuram belt.
And that's what matters when we're looking at the real estate story. Now let's come back to Tagrappu Alasa itself, because one of its biggest advantages is something that doesn't get enough attention. Tagrappu Alasa already has an established education ecosystem. For example, Oak Ridge International School Vishakhapatnam is located at Maharajapeta Junction, Tagrappu Alasa. And across the wider Tagrappu Alasa to Anandapuram corridor, you also have multiple engineering and higher education institutions. For real estate, this matters. Education creates long-term residential demand from students, families, faculty and staff. Now combine education with employment. For families, a location that balances work, schools, highways, the city and the airport can become particularly attractive. And that's where Tagrappu Alasa becomes interesting. Because this isn't just an airport story, it's already a livability story. Now let's talk about something very important for real estate: rent. Because announcements are about the future, but rent is happening today. Better quality and newer residential units in Tagrappu Alasa can command roughly 15,000 rupees to 28,000 rupees per month, depending on the property, configuration, furnishing and exact location. But this is not the average rent for every property. The broader market also has lower priced options. For example, some current listings show higher quality 2 BHK units around 26,000 rupees per month. So what does this tell us? There is already a rental market. People are already paying to live here. And that's more meaningful than simply saying property prices will increase in the future. A plot doesn't generate rental income by itself. But as rental demand strengthens, developers have more incentive to build apartments, villas, rental housing, commercial buildings. And that's how land can gradually move from raw land to developable land to built-up property to income-generating property. That's the transition a long-term real estate investor should watch. Now let's look at where the growth is coming from. To the north, Bhogapuram. The airport-led corridor can drive demand for hospitality, logistics, commercial space, housing and services. To the northwest, Vizianagaram. An established regional center with its own education, employment and service ecosystem. And towards the south, Bhimili and Vishakhapatnam. An established urban economy driven by tourism, industry, services and residential demand. So you have three major growth directions: Bhogapuram, Vizianagaram, Bhimili and Vishakhapatnam. And sitting between them, Tagrappu Alasa. That's what makes the location interesting. Not just proximity to an airport, but its position between multiple economic centers. So now comes the most important question. Why should anyone consider a plot in Tagrappu Alasa? Not simply because the airport is nearby. That's not enough. Look at the fundamentals: existing residential demand, education, rental activity, NH16 connectivity, Bhogapuram Airport, Pulipalli's proposed AI and data center development, and connectivity towards Vizianagaram, Bhimili and Vishakhapatnam. It's the combination that matters. But here's the part investors should never ignore. Don't buy a plot simply because someone says, airport is coming, prices will double. Instead, check 5 things. 1. Title. Is it clear? 2. Approvals. Is the layout legally approved? 3. Land use. Is the land permitted for your intended development? 4. Connectivity. Does the plot have proper road access? 5. Real demand. Are people actually living, working and spending money around the location? Because remember, airport proximity is not the investment thesis. Economic connectivity is. And that brings us to the property recommendation I promised. If you're specifically looking for a plotted development around this emerging corridor, one project worth looking at is SVS Belmont, located within approximately a 2-kilometer radius of Tagrappu Alasa. SVS Constructions is developing a 274-acre mega satellite township at Rajapulova Junction, around 700 meters from the Vizianagaram highway, with VMRDA and RERA approvals. Phase 1 is fully developed and ready for sale. The development includes blacktop roads, underground drainage and electricity, water pipelines, street lighting, landscaped avenues, curb-stoned footpaths, children's play areas, and an elders' park. There are also 50-foot double roads and 40-foot internal roads, along with a compound wall, entrance gate, intercom, and 24/7 security. Now, another important factor when considering a plotted development is the developer's track record. According to the developer, SVS Constructions has more than 35 years of experience, with completed ventures across Hyderabad, Vijayawada, Visakhapatnam, and Rajahmundry. The group also highlights its focus on clear titles, timely completion, and long-term project maintenance. Now let's look at the connectivity around the project. An 80-foot proposed master plan road connects towards the Vizianagaram highway. The semi-ring road passes behind the venture, and the 200-foot Tagarapuvalasa to Revidi to Padmanabham road is around 1 kilometer away. For education, Oak Ridge School and Avanti College are within walking distance. Raghu Engineering College and Anil Neerukonda Medical Institute are around 5 minutes away. And Bhogapuram Airport is approximately a 10-minute drive, depending on the route and traffic conditions. The project is also positioned beyond the airport flying zone, which may provide an additional advantage for future development. Now let's talk about the investment side. Bank loan facilities are available for up to 80% of the plot value, subject to eligibility and lender terms. And according to the project information, with around 7 to 9 lakh rupees of ready cash, you can purchase a plot, depending on the plot size, pricing, and applicable charges. If you want details about plot sizes, pricing, payment options, or a free site visit, simply call the numbers displayed on your screen. And there's also a special offer. If you show this video while booking a plot, you can receive a discount of up to 500 rupees per square yard. That's a potential saving of up to 1 lakh rupees on a 200 square yard plot, subject to the applicable terms. So if you're seriously considering property around Visakhapatnam, save this video and share it with friends or family who may also be looking in this region. And I'll leave you with one thought. The biggest opportunity may not always be where the project is located. Sometimes, it's where multiple growth stories intersect. And right now, Tagarapuvalasa is one location worth watching closely. Thank you for watching. If you found this video useful, like, share and subscribe for more genuine real estate and infrastructure insights. I'll see you in the next video.